Gregory, do you see that bit of green spinach in your teeth? Have you ever heard of Fortnite, Gregory? You need to floss. You need to floss, Gregory.
Well, this is embarrassing. I'm gonna let you guys have this one, and I'll see you next game. I always come back, and you know the bit.
Did we just win?
No, we did not, Superstar.
Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, the show that's proud to pick the nerdiest option available.
Anyone that picks Monty Golf is just a nerd.
Woo! Gator Golf! Joke's on you, Mark. Fazcam is OP. Plus, being a nerd allowed me to discover the secret daycare room and sister location room. So who's the nerd now? Me. It's still me. Last time we dove into the time travel ball pit that is Five Nights at Freddy's security breach, I walked away with some, let's just call them divisive conclusions. Basically, it was an episode with 3 separate theories packaged together. We proposed one, that Glamrock Freddy wasn't just your average sentient animatronic, but rather was possessed by the spirit of Michael Afton doing everything he can to protect Gregory. This one was generally well received, so cool, let's keep going. Why would Michael protect this random kid? Well, because 2, Gregory, whether literally or symbolically, is Michael's younger brother, FNAF 4's crying child. I started to lose people at this point, but it was really theory number 3 that threw us for a loop, because there's a good bit of evidence in both the game and in the history of the franchise to suggest that 3, Gregory is a robot, the crying child's consciousness literally transplanted into a robotic body sometime after he dies in the bite of 83. Oh, and there were a lot of strong opinions on that, with some people really liking the theory, and others, not so much. Suddenly I was flooded by people saying that I had rushed it out just to ride the trend, or that it was my dumbest theory ever, to which I say no, Deadpool is Ernest Hemingway is my dumbest theory ever. Closely followed by Wario being 10 feet tall. Anyway, the outcry was so huge that I ended up trending on Twitter because of it. You know, didn't get much better from there. Weird side note, later in the same week I was trending again because a group of performers juggled to the song Megalovania during an event for none other than the Pope. It only took 5 years, my friends, but it looks like that Steam code I gave him for Undertale finally paid off.
They called me a madman.
Anyway, like I said, a lot of heated opinions on the last one, with Twitter basically boiling down this 18-minute long 4,000-word theory down to this single image. So, yeah, thanks for not including literally anything else from that last video. So before we get to the next theory all about Vanessa, let me just address some of the biggest counterpoints I saw to the previous theory. Not because I'm convinced I'm right, far from it in fact, but because I think that the Gregory is crying child theory currently fits the best with everything the game has presented to us thus far. First, one of the key pieces of evidence last episode was this line right at the start of the game where Freddy says to Gregory,
I feel you are broken.
This, to me, was a clear connection back to the crying child from FNAF 4 where psychic friend Fredbear says to him, you are broken. I mean, kinda speaks for itself. It's a parallel that's made stronger when you actually remember how that line gets delivered back in that game. There was really no way of knowing back when FNAF 4 was released, but thanks to a secret room found in sister location, we know that psychic friend Fredbear is actually a plushie with a walkie-talkie inside of him. A walkie-talkie that allowed William Afton to scare and manipulate his youngest son. Father of the year, ladies and gentlemen. Also know that throughout FNAF 4, all of William's lines use the color FFFF57, a bright golden yellow. Golden bunny, golden yellow makes sense. But the iconic final lines of you're broken, I will put you back together actually use a different color. A lighter yellow, FFFFA0. Back then, we never really came to a satisfying explanation. Was it a mistake? Was it another spirit? Was it maybe the puppet? But now, 7 years of investigation later, we know for sure. Someone else is indeed talking here. Someone who, in sister location, is mistaken for his dad. Someone who turns purple, just like his dad. Someone who can't die, like his dad. And someone who had the lines immediately prior apologizing to his kid brother, but when that didn't get through, decided to try comforting him through the voice of his best friend. It's Michael Afton, represented by a lighter color of yellow, a color that symbolically connects him back to his father. In short, we have Michael Afton in FNAF 4 saying the line, "You're broken," to his brother through the voice of a Fredbear plush. And here in Security Breach, if we're right about all this, we once again have him saying the same line, "You're broken," to his brother through the voice of another Freddy, this time Glamrock Freddy. I personally think it's a really cool narrative connection between all these games. But a lot of people were quick to point out that there's dialogue in the game files that was cut from the final release, where Freddy says that Gregory is bleeding. Specifically, he says,
"Your arm is cut badly,
and
I am detecting blood. You are injured."
This, for many people, disproved that Gregory's an animatronic, and I actually have two things to say about that. First, when I've used cut lines of dialogue in the past, the internet has in no uncertain terms told me that I can't. But now apparently it's okay. Kinda inconsistent there, guys, and honestly I think cutting it, regardless of the reason, shows that it didn't fit the final creative intent of the game. But anyway, if that's the case, then I gotta bring this line up. A cut line of dialogue discovered by GB Aura Recharged in the game files. This one is Freddy saying,
"Gregory, I know why you're not in the customer database. I remember you from the..."
and it cuts off. Obviously, it's vague. It's kept very intentionally vague. But it also shows that Gregory is special in a way that the other disappeared kids aren't. There's a reason he's not in the customer base. He's from somewhere specific that Freddy knows about. If I were to guess, I'd say like the underground pizzeria, but you know, that's just me hypothesizing. Adding to the Gregory is special idea is the fact that Chica knows his name. She calls it out in the middle of the pizzeria. Strange detail for a kid who supposedly has no records in the system. Secondly, and I hate to be the bearer of bad news here, but in the books, because everybody loves when I go back to that well, animatronic children do actually bleed. They can also cry and feel cold. Heck, they can even feel hungry and eat. And you don't even have to go to the books for that one. You can just see it with Chica's pizza obsession in Security Breach. So to tell me that a robot child can't bleed? Yeah, I think you gotta really look at the franchise that we're talking about here. And for everyone who is confused about the timeline of Crying Child still being alive and the fact that he would be older at this point, that wouldn't actually be the case. Animatronic children in the books stay at whatever age they're built to be. Charlotte Emily actually had 4 separate versions of herself built, one for each stage of her life, so that way she could grow older, but she would just assume a new animatronic body each time. So Crying Child still being young would actually make more sense here. And to everyone saying, why would he say stuff like,
"Don't want to be crushed and twisted into a meat pretzel"?
No, again, Charlotte in the books is shocked to learn her true nature in the final chapters. Her consciousness had been grafted onto a childhood toy while she was alive, and after her tragic death had been placed inside of a robot body to function as her memory. So for all she knew, she was just a normal human being just like anyone else. Is it dumb? Yeah, I'll say that it is. Is it complicated? Oh yeah, absolutely. But is it giving us insight into the rules that Scott and everyone who touches this universe operate by? Yes, it undeniably is. Lastly, for everyone who spammed my feed with pictures of sad white boys in striped shirts saying that you had found the Crying Child, thank you for your help uncovering the lore. I get the joke. All white boys with brown hair and striped shirts are apparently the Crying Child. But remember what series we're talking about here, friends. Visual design details have always been an important part of figuring these games out. Take a look at Baby. During Sister Location, she has green eyes, but when you play her minigame, she has blue ones. At least until she kills Elizabeth Afton, who, lo and behold, had green eyes. Superficial design features like this help us to connect the dots. Are they the be-all and end-all of evidence? No, but they do help support an argument. So a little brown-haired boy in shorts with a shirt and 2 stripes seems sus.
Have you ever heard of Among Us, Gregory?
Speaking of eyes, for all the complaints about the last episode, no one seemed to have any answers to what I see as the 2 strongest pieces of physical evidence here. Why does Gregory look different when Freddy gets Roxy's X-ray eyes?
You look different to me.
And secondly, why does Gregory's vision glitch when he sees Vanny? Why does he have such a weird visual reaction to her and to literally no other character in the game? Well, you hear that high-pitched ringing sound as Vanny skips and gets closer? It seems to be a disruptor that makes her invisible to animatronics with older model eyes. In the Fire ending, Freddy, who couldn't see her at any point in the game, explicitly says,
"I can see you now. I have new eyes."
I mean, this is exactly how the much-hated sound illusion discs from the books work, creating a high-frequency sound to make people and robots invisible and or look differently, but I'm already fighting a losing battle over here, so I'm just gonna gloss over that one. Anyway, to me, it reads as Gregory's robotic eyes being disrupted. I mean, why have CRT CRT lines over the screen and not some other type of filter to show that his vision is getting disrupted? In fact, why have the same CRT lines as the security cameras all around the Pizzaplex? But there's one final piece of evidence I'd like to talk about to help solidify that previous theory before we move on, and that is the screenshot here of the final scene from the Savior ending, where you rescue Vanny from the controller glitch trap. And I use quotation marks here because there aren't any official sources giving names to the various endings. In the game files, they're just labeled as S1, S2, and S3 based on the number of stars that you get for them. It is worth noting, though, that this is the only 3-star ending that currently exists, which seems to imply that it has some level of importance to it. But here we see our 3 main characters, Gregory, Freddy, and Vanessa, all sitting on a hill, which, as I pointed out last time, is very similar to the FNAF 6 Gravestone Hill. But that's not what's important here. What I want to point out is the ice cream. Gregory is holding a golden Freddy-shaped ice cream with part of its head bitten off. If Gregory is not meant to parallel back to the crying child in any way, shape, or form, then this detail is just mean and irresponsible. This ice cream is the crying child's story coming full circle. He was terrified of animatronics and ended up being bitten by the Golden Freddy spring suit, but now he's the one sitting on a hill taking a big old bite out of Golden Freddy. That is not me reading too much into this. That is me lightly interpreting a very clear image that was put directly into this game by the designers. It is barely even subtle. And despite him wearing a blue shirt in most of the endings, here his shirt is colored purple, just like his father's signature color. Couple that with literally everything else, his lack of records, the fact that he goes into the charging station. So I stand by my theory that Gregory is an animatronic of the crying child. Is it a perfect answer? No. Do I love the fact that it complicates the lore even more? No. But does it answer the most questions with the evidence that we have? I believe it does, and it's a heck of a lot better than Fazgoo. But now, for